It started with a screech. Not the kind of screech you hear when brakes fail or a cat gets too close to a dog's teeth. This one was sharper, more deliberate, dragged out like nails on a chalkboard. Karen yanked her recycling bin back toward her garage with the kind of force you'd use to remove a tree stump. Plastic scraped against concrete with a shrill defiance, echoing through the peaceful cul-de-sac like a siren calling everyone to witness her displeasure. Her face was set in a scowl so deep it looked permanent, and her lips were pressed so tightly. Together, they formed a white, bloodless line. The neighborhood was used to seeing Karen upset. She was the sort of person who made sure everyone's hedges were trimmed to regulation height and knew precisely how long someone could leave their holiday lights up before it became tacky. But today was different. Today, Karen was seething, boiling even. And it was all because of a trifold pamphlet and 3 plastic bins. From across the street, Jaden watched her through his window, spoon paused halfway to his mouth. His cereal was already soggy, but he couldn't take his eyes off her. He was new to the neighborhood, moved in 8 months ago after landing a job at the environmental nonprofit downtown. He knew of Karen through whispers and wary glances at block parties. She was known as the Rule Book, a nickname earned from her uncanny ability to cite homeowners association policies from memory and her talent for passive-aggressively correcting others through neighborhood group chats. Jaden stepped out onto his porch, coffee mug in hand, feigning a casual air he didn't quite feel. He was curious, and, to be honest, a little worried. Karen's rage didn't just look like mild irritation, it looked volcanic. "They changed the recycling schedule again," she bellowed, slamming the lid on her bin. She wasn't talking to Jaden directly, but the volume suggested she didn't mind an audience. He approached, cautiously. "I think they're just trying to make the system better. You know, more efficient and all that." Karen turned to him like he'd just offered to sell her a pyramid scheme. "Efficient?" she said, drawing out the word like it tasted sour. "Efficient is sorting your mail into 2 piles. Efficient is knowing which drawer your spatulas go in. This," she jabbed a finger at the new chart taped to her bin, "is government-level bureaucracy for yesterday's lasagna tray." Jaden tilted his head, glancing at the flyer. It wasn't that complicated. Blue for plastic and cans, green for glass, brown for cardboard. Each bin had its label, and the chart gave examples. Yes, there were changes, but it wasn't rocket science. "Mean it's a little more than usual, but it's not that bad, right? They're trying to reduce contamination." Karen's eyes narrowed. "I've lived in this house for 22 years, and never once have I had to decode a rainbow to take out the trash. Now they want me to rinse jars, remove labels, flatten boxes, and apparently develop psychic abilities to know whether my soup container is compostable or not." Jaden offered a sheepish shrug. "I think they said you can tell if it softens in water." "Oh, so now I'm supposed to give my garbage a bath?" She crossed her arms and leaned against the bin like it had personally betrayed her. Her expression settled into the kind of exhausted indignation that only comes from being asked to do just one thing too many. Jaden tried to soften his voice. "Hey, look, I get it. It's a lot. But the planet, you know, little things add up." Karen's laugh was dry and brittle. "The planet, don't give me that. I went vegetarian in the 70s when it wasn't cool. I drove a Prius before they were chic. I reuse my Tupperware until it's practically fossilized. Don't stand there and act like I don't care." Jaden held up his hands. Okay. I'm not judging. Just, you seemed frustrated, and I figured maybe talking it through would help." Karen sighed and leaned her head back to stare up at the sky. The soft blue was streaked with faint pink clouds, the kind of morning that invited slow breathing and calm reflection. But Karen's breathing was shallow and sharp. "It's not just the bins," she muttered. Jaden waited, sensing that if he pushed, she'd shut him out completely. "It's the changes," she said after a moment, eyes still on the clouds. "The city keeps changing things. First the streetlight timer, then the mail drop moved 2 blocks away. Now they want me to turn into some kind of waste wizard just to avoid a fine. And no one even asked us. They just dropped off the bins. And assumed we'd figure it out. Like we're all tech bros with hours of free time to watch instructional videos about yogurt cup sorting. Jaden nodded, the picture becoming clearer. It wasn't about the bins. Not really. It was about a life shifting faster than she could adjust. About the fear of being left behind by a world that demanded constant learning just to function. I get that, he said quietly. Honestly, my grandparents feel the same way. Every week there's some new app, some new rule, and if you don't get on board, you're suddenly the problem. But it doesn't mean you're wrong to be annoyed. It's a lot, Karen. Finally looked at him, her gaze less fiery now. It used to be that doing your part was enough. Now they move the finish line every month. Jaden smiled gently. Yeah. But maybe it's not about hitting perfection. Maybe it's just about trying, even if it's messy. Karen didn't smile back, but the stiffness in her shoulders eased slightly. She looked at her bin again, the chart taped to the front like a challenge. Still think it's ridiculous, she muttered, but her tone had lost its bite. Jaden took a sip of coffee. You want help figuring it out? We could go over the chart together. I've got a pretty solid cardboard folding technique. Karen raised an eyebrow. Don't push your luck, Jaden. He chuckled and turned to go. Offer stands. Karen watched him walk away, then looked down at the bin one more time. For a long moment she stood there, unmoving. Then she muttered, color-coded nonsense, gave the bin one last yank toward the garage, and disappeared inside, still fuming, but maybe just a little less alone. Karen spent most of the afternoon pacing around her kitchen like a caged tiger. Her sneakers thudded softly against the tiled floor as she muttered under her breath. Occasionally, she would glance toward the countertop where the pizza boxes sat, 5 of them, stacked in a greasy tower of defiance. They were leftovers from her grandkids' visit the night before. A chaotic, sauce-smeared evening filled with laughter, spilled soda, and pepperoni slices flung like frisbees. The memory should have made her smile, but all she could see now was a problem that didn't fit in the newly dictated system. The boxes were too large to fit neatly in the brown cardboard bin, and each was stained with cheese and oil. According to the new guidelines, contaminated cardboard wasn't supposed to go in recycling, but throwing them in the trash felt like committing a felony under the stern, judging eyes of the city's waste management department. Karen glared at the boxes, arms folded across her chest. Flatten them, she muttered mockingly. Wipe them. Tear off the clean parts. Who do they think I am? A recycling sommelier? She turned back to the refrigerator, opened it, and stared blankly at a half-full bottle of lemon water. Slamming the door, she walked back to the pizza boxes, grabbed one, and inspected it like it might bite. The bottom was dark with grease. A crust still clung to the flap. She sighed and dropped it back on the pile with a soft thud. She moved to the window and peeked outside. Across the street, Jaden was lining up his own bins on the curb, perfectly spaced, like obedient soldiers. He even had labels on his lids: cans only, clean glass, flattened cardboard. She could almost hear him cheerfully whistling. Karen turned away with a snort. Teacher's pet, she muttered. She walked back to the countertop, stared at the boxes, then opened the trash bin under the sink. She paused, hands on the lid, then closed it again. A deep breath escaped her. Minutes passed. She picked up her phone, scrolled through the neighborhood forum, and found the same post she'd already read 3 times that morning. Friendly reminder: greasy pizza boxes. Trash. Clean cardboard only in brown bin. Let's keep our planet clean, folks. The post was cheerful, full of emojis, and yet it stabbed at her like a sharpened stick. She could almost hear the smugness. Clean cardboard only, it said, like everyone had time to run cardboard through a washing machine. She dropped her phone on the table and turned her back to it. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across her floor. A few kids zoomed by. On scooters outside, their laughter muffled but clear. A dog barked. Someone started up a grill. Karen stood frozen for a moment, then moved with sudden decision. She gathered the stack of pizza boxes in her arms, grease stains and all, and marched toward the front door. As she stepped onto her porch, the late afternoon light made everything look like a painting. Her lawn was crisp and neatly trimmed. The neighbor's rose bushes had begun to bloom. Jaden was outside still, now watering a sad-looking succulent on his porch. Karen descended her steps. The boxes clutched like a mission in her hands. Jaden turned just as she reached the curb. "Hey, Karen," he called with a friendly wave. "Need a hand with those?" She didn't respond. Not with words, anyway. She stepped up to her black trash bin, the general waste one, the one the city said should only be used for non-recyclables, organic waste, and other last resort items. With dramatic flair, Karen lifted the lid and slammed the first box inside. Jaden blinked. "Wait, those go in the brown bin. Cardboard." Karen didn't break stride. One after another, the boxes disappeared into the trash. Thunk. 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 "They're greasy," she said firmly. "That means they're trash now, like everything else in this system. But you can tear off the clean parts," he offered gently. "Recycle what's usable." Karen turned and leveled a look at him that could cut through brick. "If the city wants me to be a forensic analyst for pizza boxes, they can come over and do it themselves. I don't have the time, energy, or patience to dissect dinner leftovers." Jaden held up his hands, palms out. "Fair enough." Karen nodded once, crisply, and dusted off her hands as though she'd just completed a particularly righteous act of civil disobedience. She turned and walked back toward her house, feeling the weight of each step in her knees, but fueled by the fire in her chest. She hadn't felt this alive in days. Behind her, Jaden looked down at the bin, then back at her retreating figure. He shook his head with a wry smile. "Recycling rebellion," he murmured to himself. Inside her house, Karen closed the door and leaned against it. For a second, the adrenaline faded and doubt trickled in. Was she being unreasonable? Maybe. Was she making a point? Definitely. The rules kept changing. The expectations stacked higher than her arms could reach, and now even garbage had prerequisites. She was tired of adapting, tired of feeling behind, tired of being told she was the problem when she was just trying to keep up. She shuffled back into the kitchen, poured herself a small glass of wine, and sat at the table, staring out the window. Tomorrow, they'd probably fine her, or someone would post her photo on that annoying forum. There'd be comments, judgy remarks, maybe even a few sarcastic recycling memes. Let them talk, she thought, sipping her wine. At least she hadn't gone quietly. At least someone would know she was fed up. At least for one greasy, crumpled moment. The system hadn't won. She didn't notice Jaden still outside, watching the sunset with his succulent in one hand and a thoughtful look in his eyes. The next morning arrived with a stillness that felt too calm, like the air itself was waiting for something. Karen shuffled to her front door in her slippers, her hair still tousled from sleep, and a bathrobe wrapped tightly around her. She opened the door expecting the usual early morning hum, the chirping birds, maybe the distant bark of the Wilsons' overfed Labrador. Instead, her eyes fell immediately on a stark white sheet taped right across the center of her door. The tape peeled slightly at the corners, flapping in the breeze, but the red letters screamed through the silence. Violation of waste sorting. Guidelines, subject to fine. Karen stared at it, blinking. Her heart gave a sudden, annoyed thump. She tore the paper down and scanned the rest of it. The language was bureaucratic and bland. Failure to comply, contaminated materials, administrative penalty pending review. Somewhere in the margins, she thought she saw the ghost of a smirk. Unbelievable, she muttered, crumpling the paper into a tight ball and tossing it across the room. It bounced harmlessly off a dining chair and rolled under the table. They didn't waste a minute, did they? She didn't bother making coffee. Her blood was already simmering. Instead, she walked back toward the front of the house and drew the blinds just enough to peek through. That's when she saw it. The image was unmistakable. Right there, on the community app. A photograph, grainy and zoomed in, but clearly her. Karen, standing at the curb, pizza boxes in hand, dropping them into the black bin like she was throwing gasoline on a fire. Someone had caught her mid-motion, frozen in glorious defiance, and the comments were already pouring in. This is exactly why our recycling gets rejected. Thanks, Karen. What happened to community responsibility? Some people just can't be bothered. Sad. Greasy boxes, really? Not surprised. She's always above the rules. Karen's breath caught. She read the thread twice, then a third time. Each new comment tightened the knot in her chest. It wasn't just that people were upset. It was how quickly they turned. How easily they passed judgment. Some of them hadn't even spoken to her in months, and yet here they were, dissecting her 10-second act like it was a national scandal. She slammed her phone on the counter and walked out of the room. The anger that had burned so hot yesterday now chilled into something quieter, something heavier. For the rest of the day, she didn't leave the house. She couldn't bear the thought of the glances, the hushed conversations. She imagined the neighbors she used to wave to now turning their backs or whispering about her behind closed doors. The same people who once admired her perfectly trimmed hedges and her color-coordinated porch decor now saw her as a public nuisance. By evening, she had gone from furious to numb. She sat in her living room in silence, the television on but muted, the flickering images just color on a wall. The pizza box rebellion that had felt so satisfying in the moment now seemed ridiculous. Not wrong necessarily, but isolated, misunderstood. A knock at the door startled her. She hesitated, unsure whether to answer. Maybe it was a city inspector. Maybe it was another neighbor coming to lecture her, or worse, pretend to check in with a smug smile. But curiosity, or maybe defiance, got the better of her. She opened the door slowly, eyes squinting against the last light of day. Jaden stood there. He held a paper coffee cup in one hand and a folded cardboard box in the other. He looked casual, no judgment in his eyes, just a quiet kind of concern. "I figured you could use a cup of the good stuff," he said, holding out the coffee like a peace offering. Karen stared at it for a second, then took it. He stepped back, slightly, giving her space. "I saw the post," he said. "That wasn't cool." She looked at him, one eyebrow raised. "You didn't comment, did you?" "Nope," he said. "I just watched people pile on. It felt gross. I thought about saying something, but I figured maybe what you needed wasn't a comment on an app." She sipped the coffee. It was sweet and a little nutty. Hazelnut, maybe. Not what she would have picked, but oddly comforting. Jaden held up the cardboard box. "I brought a test subject." Karen gave a dry chuckle. "To study in its natural habitat?" "To practice flattening." He smiled. "No lectures, no pamphlets. Just figured you might want a second chance to throw something the right way." She took the box from him, eyes scanning its folds and creases. "You really care about all this recycling stuff, huh?" "Yeah," he said. "I mean, it's not perfect, and the rules suck sometimes. But it matters. And people who try, even imperfectly, they matter too." They stood there. A moment longer, quiet. The tension that had filled her chest all day began to lift, just a bit. Karen motioned toward her porch. "Want to show me that box technique?" He nodded, and they sat on her steps, the fading sun casting a warm glow over the street. He showed her where to pull the flaps, how to press down the seams, how to cut away the greasy parts if needed. She asked questions, not because she needed to, but because something about the process felt calming, simple, tangible. They ended up talking for nearly an hour. About recycling, yes, but also about music, about the neighborhood, about the weird sound the street lamp made at night. Jaden mentioned his mom used to call it buzzing angels, which made Karen laugh harder than she had in days. At one point, she looked over at him and said, "You know, it wasn't about the boxes, I figured. It's everything. The world changes so fast, and sometimes I just want one thing to stay the same, just one stupid thing." Jaden nodded. I get that, and she believed he did. As the sky darkened and porch lights blinked on, Jaden stood to leave. "I'll see you around," he said. "And hey, if you ever want to start a cardboard rebellion with proper sorting." "Guidelines, I'm your guy," Karen snorted. "We'll call it eco-anarchy." He laughed and headed across the street, waving as he went. Karen watched him disappear into his house, then looked down at the flattened box still in her lap. She traced a line along the fold, her fingers catching a little glue that hadn't quite dried. She stood, walked inside, and set the box next to the brown bin. Tomorrow, she'd try again. By the time the next collection day rolled around, Karen stood at the end of her driveway with her bins lined up neatly and correctly, each one spaced with military precision. The green for glass, the blue for plastics and cans, the brown for cardboard, her reluctant trio of responsibility. She had even added handwritten labels to the lids, a small, slightly sarcastic nod to Jaden's example, though hers had a touch more flair. Greasy, think twice. Shiny, rinse it. And cardboard, flat is fabulous. She sipped from her thermos as the morning sun crept over the rooftops, casting long shadows across the quiet cul-de-sac. For once, Karen felt calm. No muttering, no pacing, no internal debate about the moral ambiguity of a cheese-stained napkin. Just bins, sunshine, and the satisfying creak of plastic lids being shut with purpose. She glanced across the street. Jaden's bins were already out, as expected, and his little succulent had a new ceramic pot, mint green with painted daisies. The man had style, she had to admit. Karen adjusted the sleeves of her sweater and turned back toward her house when she heard a voice. "Hey, Karen!" It was Leah from 2 doors down, waving as she walked up with a sheepish look on her face and a half-crushed cardboard box in her hands. Her teenage son trailed behind her, earbuds dangling and a sleepy frown on his face. Karen hadn't spoken to Leah since the last HOA meeting, where they had exchanged curt nods and nothing else. I saw your labels," Leah said, stopping at the edge of Karen's driveway. "They're great. I mean, funny, but actually helpful." Karen raised an eyebrow, then gave a modest shrug. "Well, they beat laminated pamphlets in size 6 font. Leah laughed. "Seriously though, this box, pizza night last night, I wasn't sure what to do with it. Thought you might be the expert now." Karen blinked. "I'm many things. Expert isn't one of them." "Still," Leah said, stepping closer. "Mind taking a look?" Karen took the box, flipped it over, and inspected the base. Grease stains bloomed across the center, but the top half was pristine. She motioned toward her garage and disappeared. Inside for a moment, returning with scissors and a flat work surface, an old cutting board. "Here," she said, placing the box on it. "You keep the clean part. This part goes in the trash. Simple surgery." Leah watched closely, clearly impressed. Even the teenager pulled out one earbud. "You should do a video," he said, startling both women. Karen looked at him. "You know," he continued, "like, show people what to cut, what to keep. Half the kids at my school throw everything in. One bin and just hope for the best. You could go viral." "Cardboard Karen." Leah's face turned red. "Liam," but Karen laughed, a genuine from-the-belly laugh. "Cardboard Karen, huh? Better than garbage Karen, I suppose." Liam gave her a sideways grin and shrugged. "Could work." Karen turned to Leah. "You'd be surprised how much confusion there is. Jaden helped me with some of it. Not all these changes are obvious." "Yeah," Leah agreed. "Honestly, I didn't even know we couldn't recycle greasy boxes until that post about you last week. Karen stiffened for a moment, her smile tightening. Ah, yes, that post. My internet debut. Leah looked apologetic. That was uncalled for. People were brutal. You didn't deserve that. Karen waved it off. They needed a target. I gave them one. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't sting a little. I get that, Leah said, her voice softer now. But it also made me realize how much I didn't know. I've been winging it for years. And if someone like you, who actually cares, could get it wrong, well, maybe the system's part of the problem too. Karen nodded slowly. You'd think they'd make it easier, not harder. But I guess change is never simple. Then Jaden appeared, walking over with a small clipboard and a grin. Neighborhood audit? Karen asked, raising an eyebrow. Worse, Jaden replied. City's doing a Green Street pilot. Random streets are being scored based on recycling accuracy. I figured we might as well try to be the best at something for once. Karen rolled her eyes. You trying to recruit me to your green team? Jaden smirked. Already drafted. You're my co-captain. Karen looked between him, Leah, and the teenager, and something clicked into place. Maybe this whole mess, this exhausting, humiliating mess, wasn't just about garbage. Maybe it was about connection, about finding a way to pull people together, through something as ridiculous as trash. A week later, a new post appeared in the neighborhood forum. This time, it wasn't anonymous. It had Karen's name on it. Confused by cardboard? Unsure about soup containers? Join me and Jaden on Saturday morning for Sorted Out Saturday, a hands-on recycling demo and free coffee on my lawn. Bring a questionable item. We'll figure it out together. The comments rolled in fast. Love this. Finally, something practical. Count me in. I've been terrified of yogurt tubs for years. Free coffee? I'm sold. Redemption arc. Let's go. That Saturday, Karen's front lawn turned into a miniature festival of community engagement. People came with tote bags full of recyclables and questions. Someone brought muffins. Someone else brought a portable speaker and played upbeat music. There were lawn chairs, folding tables, even a DIY label-making station for bins. Karen stood in the middle of it all, scissors in one hand, a paper plate in the other, demonstrating how to separate waxy coatings from clean paper. Jaden handed out sorting champion stickers to the kids. Leah brought a slideshow on her tablet to show examples of compostable packaging. Even Liam filmed a few clips for his school's Instagram page. As the morning turned into afternoon, Karen looked around at the people laughing, learning, helping each other. There were still mistakes. Someone tried to recycle a metal hanger. Another brought a bag of styrofoam. But instead of judgment, there were conversations, laughter, suggestions. By the time the crowd thinned and people began to pack up, Karen felt a different kind of tired. Not angry or bitter, but satisfied. Like something that had come apart inside her had been stitched back together with tape and teamwork. Jaden walked over, sipping his fourth cup of coffee. You realize you're a local celebrity now, right? Karen gave a small smile. I'll try not to let it go to my head. I mean it, he said. What you started, it mattered. Karen looked at the recycling bins lined up along her lawn, each one now adorned with colorful labels and a laminated copy of the city chart. Yeah, she said, almost to herself. It kind of does. As Jaden headed off to help a neighbor lift their bin, Karen stood there for a moment longer, the breeze brushing against her face, the laughter of children still echoing faintly down the street. The sun was warm, and the world felt just a little more manageable than it had a week ago. She took a deep breath, picked up an empty water bottle from the grass, and dropped it into the blue bin with a satisfying clunk. For once, it felt like everything had gone in exactly the right place.